folks, we got some good music going today here. I'm your guest host, Steve Bass.
And I'm Larry Bass.
We're twins, as you can probably tell here by the video. I live in Seattle. I'm an investor up in Seattle. Also, I work for a major airline up in the Seattle area. And today, though, I'm going to ask Larry a few questions about his real estate business and how he likes to help people and what he does to do that.
Well, and folks, welcome to the podcast Answer Man episode number 14. Today is, what is today?
About the 7th of February.
Something in that day. It's 2 in the morning, so kind of losing track here. But we're going to just answer a few questions about foreclosures, short sales, and some of the frustrations that buyers and sellers have during this process.
Sure. So as a moderator here, Larry, why don't you go and tell me a little bit about yourself and about your real estate career?
Okay, well, I got into real estate back in 1991, so it's been, almost 19 years ago. I was in the Air Force myself and didn't get promoted to captain, didn't, I guess, kiss up enough. So I decided I'd just go ahead and just be my own boss. So I've been pretty much self-employed all these times. And obviously, you know, real estate's an up and down business. And overall, it's been good. It's been good.
Well, you know, with the market the way it is now, I think you've got many opportunities to help people, especially those people who are behind on their payments or just really need to sell their house in a non-traditional real estate way. But why have you decided to specialize in helping homeowners who are behind on their payments and who may even be in the foreclosure process?
Well, Steve, you know, I've been a realtor and I've been doing a lot of things helping people buy houses, sell houses, kind of all over the board. That's what most realtors do. And I've decided, you know, it's time to just specialize, especially in where the need is the greatest right now. And yeah, I've never seen it like this in my 18 years. So the need is so great that I said, you know, I want to specialize in helping people who are behind in their payments or who may become behind in their payments, who aren't yet. And with the values of the way they have dropped, as you know, my wife and I, we actually had to do a short sale, and we'll go into what that means later. You know, the values dropped $100,000. Well, not most people have $100,000 that they threw down on their house to have equity position.
Right.
And with the market dying like it is, you know, incomes go lower, or people get sick. So there's a lot of issues going on, and it's kind of a spiral thing. The banks are selling houses through foreclosure, bringing the lower prices, and it's causing people who aren't in foreclosure to become maybe possibly in a foreclosure because now their house isn't worth what it used to be, and now they're going to be upside down as well.
You know, and the banks aren't even loaning. Usually about 30% of the people can get what they call grade A paper, which is basically loans or conventional type loans where people can actually get a loan for a home. So you've got about 70% of the people who aren't able to qualify for a loan, and the banks, even though with the TARP money, they're not releasing the funds and loaning to people. So now people who are behind on their payments, what kind of options do they have?
Well, you've got probably 3 or 4 options. First, you have what they call the loan modification. Now, of course, this is where President Obama and the Congress threw all kinds of millions and millions of dollars again, and it's actually been pretty ineffective. You know, it's supposed to help people to maybe lower their payments, lower their interest rate for a period of time to help them get back on their feet. Right. Unfortunately, what's happening with the loan modifications, the last statistics I heard was almost 50% of the people who are in loan modification are already in default. And of that 50%, about half of them weren't able to even make their first new lower loan modification payment. Right. I've talked to people who, you know, and this process takes 60, 90 days for the banks even to get back to them to say, hey, we will accept you, you qualify for the program or not. And then I've had people come back and say, well, they dropped my payment $200 for three months or 6 months, and their payment may be $2,500. So $200 is not going to do it.
Right. They need a big drastic change, maybe $600-700, and people aren't getting that.
They're not. No, it's a joke. So I mean, that is one option that people have, but unfortunately, I don't think it's one that's really working very much. Right. There's another option that actually the banks don't want. It's called deed in lieu of foreclosure, and that's just where the person actually says, "Here, take the house. I'll just walk away, and you know, let's kiss and say goodbye." Problem with that is the banks are not set up to sell these houses. I mean, they have what they call REO department or real estate owned, but they don't have it where for everyone who is behind in their payments and underwater, so we say, to just say, here's the house and I'm gone. They don't have the infrastructure to sell that kind of housing, that many of houses.
Now, if the bank does that, though, would the homeowners be required to pay back that deficiency judgment at some time? Or
very possible, yeah, very possible.
So there's not a big incentive for somebody to give them their deed knowing that they may have to come up with $30,000-$40,000 later on in another time frame.
Now, and if they don't, it's possible then the bank will give these people. If the bank decides to take a house, or if there's a deficiency, no matter through a foreclosure or a short sale or a deed in lieu of, the banks could go after the people for the difference. Now, if they choose not to and write it off their books, then they'll send the people usually what they call a 1099. It's an IRS form, and the people may or may not have to claim that deficiency, that forgiveness, as income. It depends. Usually, if it's a primary home, they're not going to have to do that. But in the past, actually, they'd had to. But Congress did kind of wise up and say, wait a minute, why are we taxing people on a deficiency when they're losing their house? They don't have money anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So at least there was some common sense.
And they need to see their CPA and have that looked at too, make sure that is the case.
Yeah, it is. You want to definitely get some legal and some accounting advice on that.
So these people who are basically behind on their payments and they're underwater, so they don't have any equity in their house and so forth, and they need to sell their house or they lost their job or health reasons, they have to go for what's called a short sale.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that process work?
Okay. A short sale is where the bank is shorted. That's where you get the term short sale of what is owed on the property. So, for example, if you owe $250,000 on the house, but the house is maybe worth $200,000, you're already $50,000 short.
Yeah.
Now, by the time you actually go through this whole process, people have you still got to get the house sold. And the banks actually prefer to work with realtors or someone in the business that understands how it works. And if you do that, then you probably got another 8 to 10%. So in this case, probably another $25,000, even less to the bank. So that's about $75,000 the bank will actually have to lose and write off for this whole deal.
Now, why would the bank want to do something like that? What's their incentive for getting these houses off their books?
Okay, because unfortunately, in a lot of areas in the country, is the values are actually still going down. Or even if they're not, even if they're even slightly going up, it's not going up by much, maybe a couple percent if you're lucky.
Right.
But what happens is, if the bank can get a house, let's just say it's, okay, right now we're in February of 2010, and we can do a short sale and get it done in 3 to 4 months. Well, that's great, because if the bank has to wait for foreclosure, it could take the bank another 3 to 4 months just to get the house back, and then they have to remarket it, and so it could be another 2 or 3 months before it even gets on the market, and now you maybe have another 3 or 4 months after that. So there's a longer period that the house is vacant, and the values may go down, they may not, but you got the problem of vandalism. Right now with copper being so expensive, a lot of people, or I should say, we think there's more.
The thieves.
Yeah.
Are stealing the copper.
Yeah, they're going in there, cutting off the copper at the water heaters and under the sinks and pulling it out of the house and ripping out drywall. And now you've got a lot more damage to the property. Right. Or if the house is vacant, maybe someone did not turn off the water. It didn't get winterized in time, so now you got frozen pipes. You got all kinds of things that's very easily to raise their losses quite quickly.
You know, another thing that people sometimes don't think about on the bank is they have a reserve that they have to keep. There's I've heard from 3 to 8 times whatever they have for their deficiency. So if they have a house that's $300,000, they may have to have a reserve that's 3 or 4 times, 5 times that more than that they can't loan out. So now they can't loan their money, and they're not making the interest. And banks, the way they make their money is through the interest payments. So by keeping these houses on their books, they can't loan money against those houses.
Right.
So they want to get them off.
Yeah. So those houses are gone if they're sold. Now they've got $200,000, or in that case, if you times it by twice or 2 or 3, that you've got what $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $100,000 you can now loan out because they don't have to keep that in reserve because their house is off the books.
Yeah. Now, when these homeowners go through a short sale process, there's a lot of frustrations homeowners deal with the short sale process. What are some things that people need to be aware of? I think patience is first. They need to be patient because it could take 3, 4, 5 months to go through this process.
Yeah.
And the bank may not even accept a short sale because just because somebody's underwater doesn't mean a bank's going to do a short sale. They have to have a hardship letter and a real, true, need.
Right.
To have their house short sale.
Yeah, just because someone doesn't want to make their payment, the bank's not going to say, well, hey, that's okay, we don't worry about that. They actually need to be in a position where they can't make the payments because many times it could be through a divorce, a job loss, health issues, or a reduction in income. Unfortunately, the Labor Department, they talk about how we've got these new jobs being created. Well, the problem is people are losing $100,000 jobs, and they're getting $25,000 jobs.
Yep.
And yet they're just counting them a one for one. And the one thing they don't count is all the people who are like myself. I'm not even in that statistic because I've been self-employed for so long. I'm not out there with a regular job and then getting laid off. And, so they don't even count people like us entrepreneurs who aren't even on the radar screen. So there's more or less people who have jobs. So if we don't make money as entrepreneurs, we don't get the benefits of unemployment and things like this.
A homeowner, if they know that they're going to be not be able to make their payments because maybe they've been told they're losing their job in 30 or 60 days, and they don't have the funds, the savings, what should they do?
Well, I would say first thing you want to do is actually just contact your bank. Let them know, hey, I'm going to be having problems. Are there any special programs that are coming up? Because banks are, boy, it seems like there's something new every day, but then also something that's not there that we thought was there. So I would contact the bank and say, hey, listen, I'm either behind on the payment, what can we do, or I'm going to be behind on the payment. Is there anything that you can do for me? Because you want to keep that communication open with the bank. And then I also recommend that you actually talk to someone who is knowledgeable in this foreclosure process who can help you through. For example, maybe a realtor who is they call it Certified Distressed Property Expert. In fact, that's a designation I'll actually have at the end of this coming week because I'm going to go through a course on that. And even though I've been doing short sales for several years, it does not hurt. You actually want someone who's not afraid to spend money to get even more training. So you want to maybe even to have someone like that in your hip pocket because you may need them down the road. You may not be trying to sell the house right now, but you want to have someone who you trust, who can build rapport, who can guide you, maybe answer some questions that will come your way. So you just want to have that. I don't know if you know about this, but when we're doing a short sale, I was talking to this one guy named Nathan Worley, and he says he has over 700 files himself, 700 files of houses that are in foreclosure, and getting more every day, and they aren't getting that many through, so it's just piling up. It's very frustrating, very stressful, and a lot of times when we deal with foreclosures and banks, people, we're talking to one person, and all of a sudden they've left the company. So now you have to sometimes start the process over. Now someone else has got more workload because now they got their files,
right, yeah.
And they haven't traded someone, and it just becomes a really, really tough situation.
Now Nathan works for a regular bank. He's a loss mitigator.
Yeah, he is. Well, he is with Chase,
Okay. And folks, if you don't know what a loss mitigator is, they're the people who try to mitigate the losses that the banks have, try to get the best price for the house with the investor or the realtor that's submitting the short sale.
Right.
So.
Now, you know what you were asking earlier about frustration sellers have. Besides dealing with the banks and the time frame that it takes, you can get an offer. One thing that the banks won't even do is even talk to you unless you have an offer from a buyer. Right. So you got a buyer who gives you an offer on the house, and unfortunately, folks, the buyers are looking for deals. If your house is not in foreclosure, they're not going to want to pay you regular retail price. They're going to want to go ahead and give you whatever the house next door that's in foreclosure, give you that price. So obviously that makes it very difficult for sellers because they're not getting the equity that they thought they had at one time because the market is forcing the pricing down. So that's the frustration sellers are having. Then you got the buyers, and the buyers get tired of waiting. I mean, again, they want to move into their house hopefully in the next 30 to 60 days, and that's just not happening. I've got one buyer right now. We wrote the offer back in before Thanksgiving, and we still have not heard back from the bank. And that's because the banks screw things up pretty regularly, and they don't get the paperwork that's sent in 3 or 4 different times. And then these buyers say, forget it, I'm going to go ahead and just buy a different house. So now you've got a qualified buyer who is walking, and as you mentioned earlier before the radio program, or in the beginning, that only maybe 30 to 40% of these buyers even can qualify. For now, you've just lost someone who could qualify for a loan because the banks are taking so long. So those are some frustrations that the sellers are having at this time.
So would you recommend people even doing the short sale process?
Well, only if you're willing to be patient. If it's a good enough deal and you're willing to be patient, because the problem the buyers are having is they can wait and wait and wait, and the banks can say no. And then another problem they have is they can wait and wait, and the interest rates go up. Right. And even if an interest rate goes up 0.5%, it would be like losing maybe $10,000 to $12,000 in equity. So, for example, if your payment was $1,500 and your house value, and for a $200,000 house, when the rate goes up 0.5%, Now your payment is $1,500, but the value is as if you're only buying maybe $188,000 house. So you're buying less house for the same payment just because the rate went up. And with these rates have been so phenomenally low, they're not going to stay low like this forever. They are predicting that the rates will probably go up at least 1% in the next 12 months. Will that happen? I don't know.
Should a buyer offer several offers on different short sale foreclosure houses then? Would that be a strategy they'd work with?
Yeah, it's not really a bad thing to do because the listing agent, the agent who's representing the seller, understands that the buyers may not stick around. And if the agent can even get an offer from a buyer, they can at least start the process with the bank. And even if that buyer walks, at least the process is started. Hopefully a negotiator has been assigned. Then what they do is what they call they have another realtor come out and do their opinion called a BPO or broker price opinion. Yeah. At least the wheels are slowly turning.
Now, is there a statistic on realtors how successful they are with these short sales? It's kind of a specialty type of niche, I think. And a regular Joe realtor may not really know what they're doing. And whereas the seller is really putting their livelihood in this realtor's hands, and they don't know what they're doing. So I think when you're doing your certification, like you said, you want to go to somewhere like that, because a lot of realtors don't have a clue how to do a short sale.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of realtors are not very creative. Thinking outside the box, it's just very similar. And this is a totally different animal. And unfortunately, a lot of realtors, I think we've lost probably 30% of the realtors who were licensed are gone the last couple of years. They just didn't renew their license because it's expensive to be a realtor.
Right.
And then the frustration, and you don't get paid unless the deal gets done. And if it takes you 6 months, not a lot of people can weather that kind of storm.
Sure. Okay. Now, some creative other financing strategies that you have, lease options, subject to, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
How would you suggest a buyer to work those options, or to help them get into a house, or to help a seller also sell a house with, say, a lease option?
Right, because sometimes if the banks don't allow you to do a short sale, you may have to be a little bit more creative. Perhaps sell the house to, some people call them tenant buyers, or you can sell them to an investor, and just be a little creative because you don't want the house to go into foreclosure. That's actually the worst thing to do. Now, if your house goes into what they call a short sale situation, let me step back and I'll give you the timeline of how this thing works. Normally when you miss your payment and you miss 3 payments, that gets the attention of the bank. Yeah, you may miss the first payment and they'll call you and send you letters and stuff.
Right.
But they really aren't ready to work with you because they're working with people who have already missed 3 payments, 5 payments, 6 payments. Now, after you miss 3 or 4 payments, the bank says, "Uh-oh, I guess this is going to be a situation we've got to start to deal with." And then the bank will go ahead and send, in Colorado, we're what they call a trustee state. So they'll send a notice to what they call the public trustee, that's an elected or an official here at the county, okay, and say, "We want you to start the process." So, and again, that's been 90 days, 120 days since they missed their first payment anyway. And so you do this. It's called an NED. The public trustee files the paperwork, and it's called a notice of election of demand, NED, and that starts the foreclosure process. Now, once that gets recorded, that goes against your credit. Now, the people need to understand, even if you do a short sale, your credit's still going to be screwed. It's almost going to be almost as bad as if it was a foreclosure, but it won't be because the ramifications aren't nearly as bad as a foreclosure. But credit-wise, you're probably going to be in another 3 to 4 years before you're actually going to qualify to buy another house.
But if you went through the foreclosure process, how many more years in addition to that would it be?
Well, it would probably be the same, but the problem is this, is you're going to have a larger deficiency, so the bank may want to come after you for more money, whereas if the deficiency is smaller, they may just forgive it and say, "Well, no, we won't come after you for that deficiency." Another thing is, if it goes through foreclosure, you can pretty much be guaranteed the bank will come after you because you did not try to minimize their losses, so they're not going to try to help you at all. On my website, foreclosureanswerman.com, I have a chart that says why short sale is better than going through foreclosure, and it lists reasons why people should consider the short sale versus the foreclosure.
So it sounds like the deficiency is a major issue. If you get a short sale, then you could possibly have the bank forgive the deficiency, But if it goes to foreclosure, they may come up after the person.
Yeah, exactly, and put liens or garnishments against your wages and those kind of things.
So it really behooves you to at least try to do a short sale if you can't do anything else with your property.
And even if it's an investment property, I've been told that banks definitely will come after you. So even if you have an investment property that you're behind on, it's better to short sell the investment property, especially if it's an investment property.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to talk about here on my notes. We talked about basically you've got the 3 months you're behind, and the bank starts their process. Well, what you want to do is, of course, I believe you want to contact either a realtor, an investor, someone to start helping you with this process. And what the homeowner needs to understand is there's a lot of paperwork involved. The banks are going to want to see what they call a short sale package. They're going to want to see a letter written as to why you're in that situation, why you can't make the payments.
Okay, hardship letter.
It's called a hardship letter. You'll need to send in a couple years your past W-2s and tax returns, a couple bank statements, a couple of your pay stubs, a couple any type of investments that you might have, statements like that, to see if they feel like you really should be qualified for this program, or if you're just being lazy and you just said forget it. Now, what's happening, I was reading an article from, I think it was MSN last week, and they were saying people, when their houses, when they lose about 25% of their equity, they're actually just saying, you know what, it's not worth keeping the house anymore, and they're just walking. Because they just feel, I'll never get this house paid back. The value will never go up for several years, which I do believe will be the case. And they say, why am I paying a payment of $2,000 a month when I can rent a bigger place, a nicer place, for $1,500 a month?
Sure.
And, because most people, when they bought a house, they were hoping to pay the thing off and to have an equity and live for free after the thing was paid off. And now it's like, gosh, why bother?
Right.
So the morale of the American people is really suffering at this time.
Well, also people bought bigger houses than they could afford, anticipating that the appreciation rate would be up high enough where in 2 or 3 years they could sell the house, make a profit, and just speculative. And if you're at the top in that market there, you got caught. And you own the house.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this whole foreclosure thing is everyone's fault. It's not just the banks. It's not bad appraisers. There are those out there, bad mortgage people, bad realtors. It's also the greedy consumer. Hey, we wanted cheap interest rates. We know the rates are going to be fixed for 2, 3, maybe 5 years. And, of course, at that time, we're very optimistic. We're going to get better jobs. We're going to refinance, not realizing that refinancing could cost someone probably $4,000 to $7,000.
Right.
And again, these underwriting guidelines are changing all the time. So when someone used to be able to refinance, could have in the past, can't anymore. Maybe they lost their job. People weren't planning on this and weren't thinking smart, so they're getting into lousy loans. And and they just weren't thinking. They were just being too greedy. So the homeowner actually needs to take some responsibility to this. Now, there are a lot of homeowners who were smart. They got fixed rate loans. They didn't buy above their means. But again, life happened, job losses, divorce, health issues.
Right.
All this stuff happens. So even if you do your best, and if I could just encourage the listeners out there, there is life after short sale, life after foreclosure. It's going to be rough. You're going to maybe have to rent. You're going to maybe have to sacrifice. I encourage you to, get on a budget, start, just saying, okay, where are we at now? A lot of people, for example, with job losses, this actually could be a good thing. Even though they may have lost their houses, they may say, you know what, I really didn't like working there anyway. I was just kind of stuck. Well, now you've got maybe the freedom to say, what is it my heart really wants me to do? Right. What's my passion? And hey, you're already kind of screwed, so you might as well go after that. So let me encourage you out there who are listening to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take a step back. Maybe I want to go ahead and go a different direction with my life.
And maybe find out what your passion is before you lose your job.
That would be nice, but unfortunately,
pursue it then.
Unfortunately, a lot of us haven't figured that one out. It's hard, but
right. I know up in Seattle area where I help people out as an investor, we do a lot of lease options where we can help people. Say somebody who's lost a house or so forth, eventually acquire another house. They lease it first for about 12 months to 18 months, and then they end up refinancing, qualifying for a loan. We send them through credit repair, and then they can go ahead and buy the house that they were renting. And it helps the seller out. It helps the bank out because the bank doesn't take a foreclosure, and everybody, it's a win-win situation. So a lease option is a pretty good deal.
Yeah. I'm actually probably going to be doing that here about the next, about just under a year and a half. We had to short sell our house back in October. We signed a 1.5-year lease, which I've never leased a home in my life. I actually have 3 rentals, but we didn't want to move into one of those. And I'm probably going to do some type of a lease option with the people who may be behind in their payments, or maybe just owe what they just take over their payments.
Right.
And get my credit back up where it needs to be, because it's a rough time for pretty much most of us.
Sure. And if you come to Seattle, you can lease option one of my homes.
Oh, good. Hey, good. I won't feel so bad about not paying. I'll just get even with you.
I'll turn your water off.
Okay, that's all right.
Well, folks, thank you for tuning in today here. This is kind of a different way of doing it here, where I get to ask the questions of Larry, who usually asks all the questions and so forth. So it's been kind of fun. Came out here from Seattle for the night and do some of these podcasts here. And Larry, thanks for showing up.
Well, hey, I really appreciate it. I'm actually trying to get my outro music to start, and I can't do it here.
Well, we could just sing. Larry
Okay.
had a little...
Yeah, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, there it is.
Oh, good. Saved by the,
Okay,
saved by the
folks.
iPod.
It's a good thing, folks, that the iPods finally work when you can get them to working. But, hey, you have been listening to Foreclosure Answer Man. I'm your host, Larry Bass, or I should say I'm the interviewee person.
They call it the talent. He's the talent today.
Oh.
I'm the Larry King interviewee.
Okay.
So thanks for coming, folks.
Thanks a lot. You all have a great evening. Bye.